Well, hello, good evening. Welcome to week 5 of GLBT Issues in Literature. I'm Rachel Hansen. I'm really excited to have you here with us this week. Um, Now, I really am assuming that this is user error, but I can't figure out how to stream and monitor comments at the same time and see who's joining us. So, uh, if I don't welcome you or answer your questions, it's not because I don't want to. I'm just having some tech challenges these last few weeks that frankly have more to do with me than anything else. Um, but if you do have comments, I will answer them after the stream via text. So keep them coming anyway if you have questions or comments. Now just a little bit of housekeeping before we kind of jump in and get started in earnest. As ever, if you are just here to comment on what a woman looks like on the internet, um, even more than normal, because I can't see your comments, this isn't the place for you. But if you're here to learn and have uh, some asynchronous conversation, then like welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. Um, the other thing that is a little housekeeping before we really get started in on our module this week is actually just a little request for some assistance um, from me to you. Um, I'm sure that I've mentioned this sometime in the last few weeks. Um, and in my mind, I'm thinking a few weeks even into like the fall semester. I have a pretty broad definition of what a few can be, much to the chagrin of my spouse and children. But I have been looking for a new role that is a little bit more like teaching based than what my full time job actually is right now. Um, and something that would be tremendously helpful to me, if you are comfortable, would just be like some testimonials of like if you have found value in this online space. Um, Now, when the recording of this uh, goes up, there will be a link to just like a simple Google form where you can share your feedback. Um, and then, right, like if I could, I'll ask for permission to either use like your full name, your first name, or to share feedback anonymously if I'm, just like putting together application materials. Um, Also, kind of side by side with this, if you know any place that is hiring for an instructor that is really focused on online learning in asynchronous environments, um, I'd appreciate a connection. So um, that's kind of the light stuff to kick us off here in week 5, where we're talking about stories of conformity and resistance. Now, when I wrote this module, um, this was really hard for me. And I think that you will see that reflected in, like, if you haven't read the module yet, um, when you read it, I think you'll probably be able to tell if I'm being real honest. Um, because I was writing this module the day after Renee Goode was murdered by ICE in Minneapolis. Um, and I wasn't feeling great. I mean, I'm still not feeling great, honestly. Um, but in the rigmarole of the 24-hour news cycle, um, I'm just gonna pause and remind everybody that that wasn't always the way that the news was delivered to us. Um, so just if you're thinking, why does it have to be this way? It hasn't always. It hasn't always been this way. Um, but in the 24-hour news cycle, this is something that maybe we forgot. That in those immediate, like 1 or 2 days following those events, it took a while for all of the facts to come out. And one of the things that I was really struggling with at the time that I wrote this, um, was something that I thought was true. And that being, um, that Renee Goode's child, who is the same age as one of my children, was completely orphaned. Um, and all of it was just all of it is just a big old bag of awful. Um, and that specifically is what I really latched onto. Um, Now we know now, and didn't in the first couple of days, um, that thankfully Renee had, well, kind of thankfully, right? Like, what a terrible thing to be thankful for, but um, had been married to a very excellent woman, um, who is still a parent to that little boy. And that's good news. But it shouldn't have to be that way. Um, and I think as I have sat and really reflected on those events, um, thinking about how to resist authentically in a way that um, is helpful and is also like true to each one of us is so important. And really, like, one of the things that I am doing is this. I think that talking about um, feminism, like learning about feminism, learning about different lives and different perspectives, and really incorporating that into our like regular everyday lives is so critical. Um, right now, if you've been watching for weeks, I'm sure that you have noticed this little display behind me, um, which is a little Funko setup of Flag End, and we've got Bilbo and Frodo there on each side. Um, and just that reminder from uh, the cinematic version of the Lord of the Rings, that Sam talks about, where Sam has that really excellent line that there's some good in this world and it's worth fighting for. Um, and what fighting looks different for each one of us. Uh, this is not perfect. Obviously not. Uh, but I'm hoping that, like, by me talking about it and everybody else talking about it, that we really do come to imagine a world that is better than the one that we're living in right now. Um, but before we can imagine a better world, and kind of execute on that imagination, we have to understand the world that we live in now. Which brings me to um, this next chapter of All Boys Aren't Blue. And as a reminder, this is chapter 4. in the text. Um, Sometimes I get really uncomfortable because the words that are used in these books are not words that I use in my regular life. But the chapter is called Bags Play Football Too. Um, I had talked last week about how George Johnson's intergenerational family, and right, like that close knit dynamic with extended family was kind of a mystery to me. Um, but one thing that is definitely not, as a child of the 90s, uh, is trying to figure out how to fill your time at recess at school. Um, and for a lot of us, certainly me, um, the 1990s really were a magical time for like playground time. Um, Especially in kind of like those early elementary years, right? I remember having just open fields, we could go nuts. Um, Jump ropes there in the playground. Uh, Too many kids got whipped. Uh, they don't have them anymore. Playgrounds, which that's not great. But and I think about some of the playground equipment that I played on as a kid that I don't know that I would feel great about letting my kids play on that now. Um, right, like just dangerous enough to be fun. Uh, but for fifth grade George, um, it was just dangerous. Because he didn't want to do like the boy things, right? Um, he wanted a double dutch. Now I probably could not hold my own as an adult, but was pretty good jump roper as an elementary age kiddo. Um, could not ever get the hang of double dutch. It just takes too much dexterity. So for anyone to be able to do it, like that's amazing to me. But that was the activity that he picked, was getting the hang of double dutch. Um, Only as it's a theme, I think we're kind of starting to notice in this book. Um, George Johnson doesn't feel like he can do the things that he loves. Because it's a girl thing to want to do. Um, and so he concludes by saying um, that he would opt into the things that he didn't want because safety trumps satisfaction. Quote, every time. Um, and I think about that, right? I think about um, those little boys then in the 1990s. Um, Feeling like all the boys had to do specific activities, even at a young age, to perform masculinity in a way that was acceptable and wouldn't get you hurt, right? Or maybe more to the point, not hurt by your peers on purpose, right? Um, because I think we all know that, right, boy things are usually pretty dangerous, right? Football, basketball, like, whew, there's some serious injuries there, right? Now he of course talked about some serious injuries that he also sustained in double dutch, because again, like you get whipped with those plastic jump ropes, it's not great. That's for sure. Um, but really, what were those boys learning at home that made them think, um, like, oh no, like jump roping of any kind, not acceptable. Um, right? Were some of the grown-ups aware that that was the message that they were passing on? Um, Maybe they weren't, right? Like maybe they had um not that level of introspection that you need to realize that they are passing along something um that was, yeah, I can't think of a smoother way to say this, but right, like kind of a stupid reason to cause harm, right? Like it's jump roping. What's the big deal, right? Um, so I'm really hoping that we can think about um maybe experiences in our lives where safety trumped your own satisfaction. Um, but also how you're interacting with others in your life to make sure that they can do the things that they love that aren't harming others, right? Um, now, I just finished my water, so hopefully before too long my tea's going to be cooled off enough to drink. But, um, right, if we're kind of moving on now into Zami, a new spelling of my name by Audre Lorde. Um, right, opting in for her in these right, what in chapters 8 and 9, right? Yeah, that we're talking about. Opting in looked a lot different because this is a point in her life where World War II is in full swing and the United States is involved. Um, and I think that's really obviously the more specific piece. World War II had been going on for a while. Um, the United States is involved. Um, and so opting in meant, um, and I quote, cream colored bone discs that were engraved in blue ink with name, address, age, and something called blood type. Um, it also meant practicing air raid drills, getting ration coupons, and maintaining silence, right? Um, we've got, reading about this little girl here who's being raised in an era where the phrase was loose lips sink ships. Um, and I just, my heart aches for little Audrey. Right, she's just at this time where she's starting a little bit to find her own voice, right? Um, and we've talked about that in previous weeks. Um, and now here she is again. Like, nope, you better zip it and just quietly move about your day. Um, yeah, pretty good. In case you were wondering. Um, but she asks us to think about the people that we pass in our lives, um, unacknowledged and unadmitted. Um, and really thinking for like knowing ourselves so that we can know others. Asking the question, like, who am I anyway? Um, and there's so many different models, right, for answering that question. Um, I think about um, like the faith tradition that I was raised in, where um, the answer to who am I is I'm a precious child of God, right? Um, that's something that is pretty powerful. Um, if you believe it about yourself and then even more powerful if you subsequently treat others in that way. Um, we all know that's not often what happens, so unfortunately. Um, but really thinking about that is a little heavy. Um, whenever I am thinking about this very specific topic, I think back actually quite a while to something that one of my sisters said. Um, we were we were talking about doing things that we uh, found to be relatively cumbersome. Now, my sister and I were both in like our very early 20s, if that, at the time. It's been a while. Uh, and so I have to think that the things that we thought were really onerous at the time were relatively benign, honestly. But my sister said um, that sometimes she did things that she didn't want to do because she wanted to be the type of person that wanted to do the thing that she was doing. Um, and so when you think about that, it's also not just inherently who am I, but who can I make myself into, right? Like, I think we have some responsibility to make ourselves into the people that we want to be. Um, now, our journal article this week uh, has a pretty hefty title. Um, it's called Making Heteronormativity Visible, Lesbian Parents in Australian Early Childhood Settings. Um, just based on all the stuff that we've just talked about, right? Like knowing who you are, and like keeping quiet. You might be wondering very fairly why this is the article that I chose. Um, because it might feel a little like it's coming in from left field, right? Uh, but the reason that I chose this article very specifically is because of this study that was done, um, kind of just interviewing and following lesbian parents in Australia, right? Clue is in the journal article name. Um, about um, to really like understand their experience as parents of very young children. Um, and our author, Kathy Clausey, uh, says, and I quote, making heteronormativity visible can provoke educators to consider the way pedagogical practices and policy promote normative understandings of diversity and sexuality. End quote. So, or in other words, right? There's most of us aren't living in academia all the time. Um, if you see what's happening, you can start to do something about it. Um, and so I would put to you, um, first examining how we perpetuate heteronormativity, but also other concepts that we consider as normal, right? Um, so that we can examine ways to change. Uh, shoot. I hope you'll forgive me. I believe that it was last week, but maybe 2 weeks ago, um, where we were talking about the role that colonialism plays in what we consider to be normal. Um, so really, like, taking time to think about that, like how um, has our colonial past, um, even if we ourselves have not colonized anything, right? We still benefit from that system. Um, really taking the time and sitting in the discomfort to understand the harm that was done so that we can then work together to undo it. Um, I don't think that it's possible for me to overstate how important it is um, to really sit in that discomfort and do something about it. Um, and to my mind, that's really all that there is. Now, as we are kind of closing out the week here, um, I want you to think about how you approach silence in your life. Um, is it something that normally you um, approach from a place of harm and hurt, or is silence restorative to you? Um, and maybe how could you think about it differently? Um, Now, I really appreciate you spending time with me this evening, and kind of just getting to talk about um, a little bit what it looks like to opt out and opt um, in a way that feels safe and authentic to you. Um, Now, I will see you in your inbox. Look at my calendar. Next Monday, February 16th. And I'll see you live back here on February 18th. So I hope you all have a great week, and I will look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.